You are interested in the unknown, the mysterious, the unexplainable. That is why you are here.
3, 2, 1.
Spook.
We are gathered here as advisors, as scientists.
The kind of place we expect a ghost to like to wander around.
Hey, we all know that we're gonna die, baby.
I'll help you. I'm something of a witch.
Welcome to Mission Spooky. I'm your fantastic host, JC. With me today, as per usual, is the queen of everything herself, Kiki, and our local cryptid enthusiast. Sorry, almost slipped up there, Cord.
You almost fucked it up already.
And do I sense another presence on our channel, on our recording devices? Is this-
I'm getting a B. Bullshit. Bullshit.
Oh!
No, it's not that. Very sexy. Well, that could be that. Could be that.
Yeah,
Nope.
very, very. I'd go with it.
Guys, it's my fake dad.
Oh! Yeah, that's where I wanted you to introduce him, Kiki, because I always let you do it.
Always. How often does this
I
happen?
know,
This is
right?
the first time I've been here. A little bit worried now, guys. A little bit worried. Is there
The first time that you know of.
you're an effigy somewhere?
We have a segment called Listen to Brennan Sleep.
Oh, I'm so sorry. You must really have to manage the peaks on that one because there's a lot of apnea happening.
We get real close and then real far away.
You just think I don't know.
Welcome to the Brennan Sleeps cast.
It is Brennan Storr from Ghost Story Guys. If you have not listened to Ghost Story Guys yet, what is your problem? Because we pretty much talk about them like at least 6 times a month.
Yeah.
So we got Brennan here today, and the subject is going to be Tommyknockers. But tell us a little bit about Ghost Story Guys, though.
Sure, yeah. We are a bi-weekly storytelling podcast hosted by myself and Paul Bestel, who also hosts the Mysteries and Monsters podcast. And we tell true life stories of the paranormal and then a little bit of humor, a little bit of skepticism, and try and have a good time doing it. And generally speaking, I think we succeed. We've been doing the new version of the show for almost 10 months, and things are going really well. We've had some great guests and great topics. We've done shows on the haunting of Vietnam, stories from the desert. I believe it was the haunting of Nevada. We've done Mysteries Hawaii recently with Lapaka Kapanui, who's sort of the ghost story guy out of Hawaii. And we've got some cool stuff coming up. So that's kind of who we are. And then I also host Largely the Truth with Brennan Storr, and that's a non-paranormal interview podcast.
Which has been a lot of fun. I just got into that now that I can binge my podcasts.
Thank you very much.
And today's subject is one that we have not covered yet. It is actually kind of very much connected to Pennsylvania, especially anthracite country, coal country. By the time this comes out, we'll have passed our 2-year anniversary. But very first episode we ever did was on the mafia in coal country, and now we're bringing it back around. Only this time we're going to be talking about Tommyknockers.
Maybe not quite as scary as the mafia, but you know.
Probably not. Actually not. And I was surprised. So what did you find out about Tommyknockers, Brennan? Because this is something that has interested you, yes?
Yeah, well, I will say first, I found out that in a nice little bit of, I don't know, synchronicity maybe, I recently found out I have my own mafia connection. And of course, I also have a very long-standing Pennsylvania connection that I still don't really understand. But I found out recently that one of my great-great-grandfather fled to Canada because he murdered a mafioso over a card game in Boston. So, kind of a fun, again, I don't know if that's fun. It wasn't fun for the guy he shot. It's fun for me now, 120 years later. What's great about it is there's always been this sort of apocryphal story in the family that my grandmother would say, oh, we had so-and-so who was a mobster and he had to run away because they were going to kill him. And my grandmother, bless her, lovely woman, not very smart. And she would say things like, because the family name was Locusano, she would confuse that with Luciano. And so she would be watching a program about Lucky Luciano, the mobster, and she'd go, oh, there he is. That's my great. And I'm like, nope, that can't possibly be right. And it wasn't, of course. So we kind of just started to assume, okay, the whole story is bullshit. But no, it turns out my wife's been doing a lot of genealogy research, really, really in-depth stuff. And yeah, no, it turns out there was a story again in Boston, card game. Someone was shot, and this fella fled to the town of Mara, BC, which is about as far away from fuck all as you can get, especially back then. It's a small town now. It was I don't know what it was then. So that there is some truth there. I've got connection to the mafia and also to Pennsylvania. And my connection to Pennsylvania is I've actually did a whole hour-long episode of one of our Patreon podcasts on the various synchronicities and weird dreams that have firmly fixed me to Pennsylvania, to the point now where I'm actually working with a Pennsylvania-based singer-songwriter. We're just starting working together on an album. I'll be doing lyrics and he'll be doing music, which may be at least in part about Pennsylvania.
Nice.
Yeah, but in terms of Tommyknockers, I didn't know a lot about them going in. And of course, the Tommyknockers are believed to be, nowadays, they're commonly referred to as spirits in the mines who cause trouble. The name is believed to come from the knocking sound that timbers make when they're under stress prior to a cave-in. And I didn't know much about them. But what I learned is that there are actually records of stories about small elf-like creatures in mines going back at least as far as 1549. I found a record of the German metallurgist Georgius Agricola, who spoke about these little mining creatures, and I have the quote here. They're described as being dressed like miners and sort of mimicking what miners do, but without actually helping much. So they'll be seen, they're about 2 feet tall, wearing miners' clothes. I think at the time it would be like a leather outfit with a leather apron, and they would move ore around or put ore into buckets, but they didn't really do much. They just kind of got in the way, according to the legend. And supposedly they would sometimes throw stones at the miners, but generally speaking, they weren't negative. They weren't menacing in any way. They were just kind of there. And the only way they would ever get pissy with you and actually cause trouble is if they were taunted by the miners or if they were cursed by the miners. And apparently then they would fight back. And there's a story about a miner named Trevorrow. And Tom Trevorrow, he cursed these things. So this miner from Cornwall, and of course the legend of Tommyknockers is really heavily tied to the English county of Cornwall, because beginning really in the 1820s, thousands of Cornish miners were sort of forced to leave Cornwall because the price of tin and copper, which is what they had mined, it dropped to very, very little after the end of the Napoleonic War in 1815. So they were forced to leave Cornwall and find work elsewhere. And because they were legendary miners, because there had been mining in Cornwall for thousands of years, they found homes all across the world. And you'll find like little references to Cornwall in, as you said, Pennsylvania, California. There's a town in Australia that's called basically Australia's Cornwall, or Little Cornwall. Brazil, I believe they went. Everywhere people of Cornwall were known, and so they went there. The Cornish are kind of most commonly identified with the Tommyknockers, but as I mentioned, those legends are also found in Germany, in Asia. They're not exclusive to Cornwall. I kind of tend to think that's the most commonly found English language source of those stories, which is why we tend to identify them with Cornwall. But anyways, there's a story of this Tom Trevorrow, and he was a miner from St. Justin, Cornwall, and he was pissed at the knockers, and he told them to be quiet. He said, "Go to blazes, you cussed old Jews spirits, or I'll scat your brains out." And I'll explain the Jews thing in a sec. And later refused to share his supper with the Tommyknockers. And according to the legend, the knockers recited a rhyme to the miner. They said, Tom Trevorrow, leave some of thy fuggin' for bucka, or bad luck to thee tomorrow." And of course he left nothing because he thought, fuck these guys. And they said him again the next morning, Tom Trevorrow, will send thee bad luck tomorrow. Thou old curmudgeon, to eat all of thy fuggin', and not leave a digin for bucka. And digin is his little piece. And according to the story, he didn't, and they ruined his luck. And he ended up having to take up farming, which is apparently a despised fate for a Cornish miner. And so, yeah, there's a long, long history of these creatures in mines, and again, in some cases causing trouble, in other cases warning miners of cave-ins or helping them find things or warning them of explosions or bad air. I've read about this one mine went about 2,600 feet down, and the air down there at that depth is so poor that candles only burn blue. There isn't enough oxygen for them to burn orange.
Wow.
And so when you're working it with that little oxygen, of course, you've got a very slim margin for error. As I recall, the miners can only work about 15 minutes out of every hour because of the heat and the lack of oxygen. As I recall, the temperatures rose up to about 120 degrees down there, which is, as the kids say, fucking hot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's sort of some of the stuff I found. And I did mention I was going to explain the bit about the old Jew spirits. That was not an old-timey slur. Well, I guess it kind of was. One of the legends of Tommyknocker lore, one of the parts of Tommyknocker lore in Cornwall, is that they believed these were the spirits of Jewish miners, basically, because there was a legend, of course, apocryphal, that this was the punishment of the Jews for the crucifixion. That they were like reduced in size and forced to work in the mines. That is where that comes from.
I actually read the same thing and was like, what the heck? Like, oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah, and what's kind of cool too is when the Cornish came to North America, especially, the legends really morphed because obviously North America, we don't have, there's no historical Jews, like the Roman Jews aren't here.
Right.
And we don't really have a belief in things like elves. It's always been kind of a more Christian place. So that part of the legend kind of faded away. And for a long time, the Tommyknockers were instead more believed to be ghosts of miners. Obviously, now as information is easier to access, the elf part of the legend has kind of come back. But for a very long time, they were just considered to be, the ghosts of miners.
It kind of reminds me of like a gnome.
Oh, yeah. They're very much tied into gnomes and imps. In fact, one of the German names for them, Wichtlein, translates apparently, according to Google Translate at least, to imp.
Ah, that makes sense. Like I know the elf thing, they're supposed to be almost very similar to gnomes, but when you described what they look like, I literally pictured a gnome just with a miner hat instead of the big cone hat.
Yeah, that works.
Safety first.
That's it. We say you can only die once, but who knows? Maybe it happens more than once.
Oh no.
Wouldn't that be a bummer? Oh shit, not again.
So, talking about the folklore, in Bohemian folklore, they're called Hausschmidlein. Yeah, my German is not that great.
Yeah, I had a little trouble with that one.
I'm pretty sure it's Schmidlein.
I couldn't find a translation for that, so I'm curious to hear your take on that one.
It means little house smith.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And that he is a little spirit. I don't know if you found anything, but I didn't find anything to indicate that these were anything other than male.
Yeah, I found no record of female Tommyknockers, and not only that, but one source suggested that they were either afraid of or didn't like women.
Oh.
There's also old superstitions about not having women in mines, so
Right.
it's possible that that's just sort of a kind of a connection to that rather than anything sort of rooted in reality. Of course, how much of this is rooted in reality is open to interpretation.
So these guys, the little house smiths, they would knock 3 times to let someone know that there was impending doom. There was a story, but it's a mine in Arizona, but I'm just still going to mention it because it's kind of funny. The mine workers would be working all through the night, and some of the houses, like basically little shacks at this point, because we're talking like late 1800s or late 1900s, they would have these shacks that were built above the mine. And the children would have a hard time sleeping because they would hear the miners work all through the night. And so this guy, a Welsh guy, had brought with him the same concept of Tommyknockers, and he tells the kids, well, they're just knocking. That's the Tommyknockers. They're just working through the night. So don't be afraid if you hear the little tink, 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 under your bed. It's actually just them like really, really deep in the ground, and they're just working. And I thought that was actually kind of sweet.
Interestingly enough, I found that reference to that, but it was from Grass Valley, California. And what was actually happening was miners would often, because they were not paid very well, they would smuggle high-grade ore out of the mines on their person, and they would mill it at night in the basement.
Ah.
And because this was highly illegal, because obviously, if you were stealing from the company, but they would have to mill it in secret in the basement. And so if this way, they would tell the kids it's the Tommyknockers, so they didn't go looking around. Because if the kids went looking, they would find this, and odds are they would blab about it.
Because kids are dumb.
Kids are super dumb.
Got him.
Take that, children. Dance back.
I also found, this is one of those Welsh ones, it's Coblynagh. Sure, that's what it is today. Coblynagh. Coblynau. I'm sure I'm not saying it right because Welsh is, I actually tried learning it one time and was like, yeah, I'm out.
Oh yeah, Welsh is an insano language. It's like bowling with consonants.
Yeah. Doesn't even make any sense to me in my little mind. I don't get it. But that word is associated with kobolds in Germanic.
Ooh.
Brennan, you mentioned about how these were also possibly the ghosts of dead miners. And boy, do we have some really good ghost stories. Actually make the newspaper on more than one occasion. Yeah. Yeah, it's
Who
crazy.
reads the newspaper anymore, though?
Oh, JC.
This was old timey newspaper. This was like old timey TikTok. It's all you had.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Don't tell him that. He'll start buying newspapers now.
And I'll send him to court.
And I'll just get mad and throw him in the garbage.
Weekly World News.
I'll just send it to him like, hey, did you hear that the president's a lizard person?
Look, bitch, Bat Boy is real. They can't put it in the paper if it's not real.
There are a ton of haunted mine stories. And as I said, I love the fact that these miners were taken very seriously to the point that most of these are in newspapers at some point. The only one I want to mention, but I cannot get to the actual story because it's behind a paywall. Really, all it is the proof that this poor guy, Elijah Bowicker, was actually murdered. It's Neshonoc Mine, and that is in Neshonoc Township in Lawrence County, obviously Western Pennsylvania, because most of these are going to be Western or mid PA. We don't really have the mines out here. We're closer to Philly, so.
Right.
So this guy apparently was seen many times by a bunch of miners, and that it was his ghost. Like, they knew him. No, I don't think they ever caught who the person was that murdered him. For whatever reason, his ghost starts showing up, carrying a pickaxe and a light and everything. That one doesn't make the papers as far as the ghosts itself. Yes, but then we've got Bellevue Shaft in Scranton.
I'm a 5-year-old.
I know you're like, Bellevue Shaft. Yes, JC. I'm gonna mute him.
Yeah, I gotta mute myself.
So yeah, oh gosh, reading about these mines, I had no idea how many children died in the mines because they put them to work.
Child labor laws are killing this country.
Also found out when I was reading about this stuff that before I get into this particular haunting, I was curious because I knew the Dar mine explosion was a big deal in PA. It's still considered one of the worst accidents to ever happen in the history of the state. But I could not find anything that there's any haunting there necessarily. It's just a very tragic accident that happened. And there were a lot of kids, maybe like 12 to 18, that were working that day that perished. I also found out something interesting about Italians because when they're listing the people who passed away, it says something like 30 some Americans, and then it says 60 some Italians, like very specific. And I guess this was because you weren't necessarily going to be a citizen of the United States if you were Italian or Irish, especially at this time. Had no idea that whole thing had been changed to where you couldn't just come to America on a boat, so to speak, like my ancestors did. Oh, no. You had to, fill out paperwork now. And there's a bunch of white guys who decided who was going to get in the country and who wasn't. And Italians were said to be combative, and Irish, this is literally like what it says in quotes, and Irish were considered to be too drunk all the time. So if you couldn't work, right, quote unquote, according to them, then you couldn't be a citizen. My poor Italian ancestors, you guys are getting treated like crap, even though you're working your butts off in the mine and literally get exploded. Still not Americans.
I was going to say North America has a fine tradition of treating like shit people who come here to work real hard and are in fact the most vulnerable among us. So it's if nothing else, they're consistent.
Right.
And
I was like,
yeah, consistency is key.
In the absence of humanity, consistency.
Yeah.
I was like, why is this surprising to me? I don't know why this is surprising to me, but it was a little bit. I was like, wow, okay, that's mean and terrible. But
if you weren't part of the Europeans that came over and committed mass genocide, you're not really, you're not in the group.
Right, yeah, you're not part of the team.
Yeah.
if you're not white and English, get out.
Yeah,
So the Bellevue Shaft, though, this one did have a bunch of fatalities. It was like 67 of them in 1872, 1875, there's 62, 1877, there's 40, 1879, there's 59. Yeah, these guys weren't really getting taken care of very, very good either. The youngest victim in all that was 10 years old. Yeah. And then the oldest was 72. So talk about a career in mining. Ouch. That's a long time. So when this haunting goes down in 1872 is when it starts up. The Scranton Republic newspaper actually does have a whole article about it. April 19th, 1872. So the ghost, though, is or was because apparently nobody sees him anymore. 6 feet high, composed of white, thin, vapory substance, and it moved through chambers, appearing first to one gang of men and then to another. Guys, they fired pistols at it.
I feel like this isn't the first story we've covered or I've heard where they're like, it's a ghost. Shoot it.
Well, I mean, fuck that guy.
This is Pennsylvania out here. This is prime Pennsylvania area.
Pennsylvania has more guns than any other state in the United States.
We know. Shh, psst, we know.
And we know it.
It says many shots passed through him. Wait, it doesn't say all the shots. It says many shots. Okay. So did they? I don't know about this reporter. Like, did they actually hit? I don't know.
No, it just many shots passed through him. Other ones just weren't even near him. It's like they were.
Yeah, okay,
really
it was
bad
supposed to be a
at
joke,
aiming.
JC.
We're just fucking blasted at that point. It went from there's a ghost, shoot it, to now we're just having fun.
Well, this is my thinking is they shot some guy and they're like, oh shit, we saw a ghost. Look at my eyes. We saw a ghost. And that's how Ernie got shot. Most of them went through the ghost. Some of them got Ernie. And it's not because he owed me money and was staring at my wife.
See, yeah. So many shots passed through him, yet he seems to be invulnerable to pistol balls. He frightened the mules and drove the men out of the chambers, and he threatened individual people and produced a general consternation, quote, among the workmen. All attempts to catch him have been proven abortive. This is quoting now, and he's getting to be a decided nuisance. That's so 1872. He's a nuisance.
Decidedly a nuisance. That's 1840 for motherfucker.
Yeah. Yeah.
I found in reading around, there's actually sort of a long tradition of, you mentioned the mules. There are said to be like mule ghosts and things blamed on mules in mines as well. Specifically, they'll talk about the white mule. So, they'll ask a new guy, hey, have you seen the white mule? You fucking idiot. And, the idea being that the new guy's supposed to go, oh yeah, he was just pulling the cart. But sometimes they'll also blame things on the white mule or the headless mule. And I assume it's just there wasn't much going on back then. So, you can only play I Spy so many times in a mine.
I spy the ore. Well, Jimmy, that's your job.
Well,
Yep.
time to start digging then.
Well, and the walls caved in, I'm dead.
I'm so glad I live in a time where I don't have to work in the mines.
I thought you were just going to stop at don't have to work. I was just
Right.
No, I work. I mean, barely, but I work.
So I had not seen anything at all about the mules. I have to look that one up. Jetto Mine in Hazleton. This is from the Newcastle News, August 18th, 1915. This is one of those times where they actually stopped production in an entire area because the guys were like, I'm not going back in there.
Wait, did they sign the too spooky form?
Mhm. I forget what number we gave that. The military is too spooky form. Yeah. So, and then the management strung electric lights along the tunnel to, quote, end the terror by the rays of tungstens. This one just says that a year before a man had been killed. So this is a guy who dies because a whole bunch of coal falls on top of him. And the legend says that he was trying to tell people some kind of secret because he knew he was going to die. So it's like, my treasure's buried in that kind of thing.
That's how I hope I go.
And they believe that this specter is the same guy because they're claiming that he was coming at people and looking like he was trying to talk and tell somebody something, but nothing is coming out of its mouth.
He's just a ghost equivalent of the guy on the bus who wants to bother you.
Yes.
How about this weather we're having, hey? Oh, Christ. No.
Have you seen that Trump's a lizard man too?
Yeah, you're right. That's more likely the conversation.
Yeah, I've traveled on a lot of buses.
I actually got stopped by a homeless guy the other night, and he's like, man, do you know? Okay, all good conversations start this way. Yeah, I was standing respectful 6 feet the fuck away from him as I learned about Hitler living in South America. So, yeah. You mentioned, the too spooky form. I found reference to a mine it's not in Pennsylvania. Weirdly, I didn't find a lot of academic stuff on sort of the history of Pennsylvania mines or Tommyknockers. There's a lot of, it was that kind of thing where I found most people seem to be referencing each other. Like, oh hey, we've read this mysterious universe article, let's more or less rewrite it here. But I did find a bunch of shit in California, and one of them was, California, Nevada, and one from Nevada was the Murchie Mine, and apparently one guy refused to re-enter a mine because he, quote, saw devils back in there. So he needed that. If anyone was filling out a Too Spooky form, it was that guy. This was in the Folklore Quarterly I mentioned from 1942, and they said, oh well, he was probably just a little bit drunk, like the guy at the Old Brunswick mine which was in Grass Valley, California, and that guy would not go back in because he claimed to see monkeys with red hats dodging in and out of the timbers. And the thing I was really curious about reading that is, how the fuck do you have someone tell you that and say, oh, he was probably drunk? Like, guys, I haven't been drunk in a long time, but prior to that, I was drunk a lot. And I got to say, I never saw monkeys.
No.
I've never once saw monkeys wearing red hats while I was drunk. I wish I would have. I'd have some stories about it. For sure. I wouldn't have ran out. I would have given them alcohol probably, and we'd be buds.
I did that one time, but that was a real wild party, man.
Also smoked a lot of DMT, and also there were monkeys there, and they were smoking DMT too. So
Yeah, they also had hats.
Nice hats. But yeah, I find that with a lot of paranormal shit, right? People say, oh well, he must have been drunk, or stoned. Again, I've been drunk, I've been stoned. None of those times have I ever seen behatted monkeys.
Yeah,
and
that's a weird one.
Because somebody is drunk or stoned, it doesn't negate the fact that they might have actually, like, drinking most drinks anyway isn't a hallucinogen.
That's it.
Black Diamond Colliery. God, I cannot say that word. It's like Colliery, Luzerne County. This guy, Anthony Stensky, on October the 1st. I like how some of these actually do occur during spooky season. He was found unconscious on the floor and claimed that he got attacked by a ghost whose fingertips glowed with fire. And that's in the paper. Yeah. It's called Flaming Mine Ghost Throws Colliery Idol because nobody would work again. And I like the fact that these whole mines, which is shut down because dudes were like, nope, that guy said he got attacked by a ghost. Of course, there's also a cynical side of me that's like, man, once it happened one time, can you imagine these guys are like, we need a break? Like, hey, Anthony, can you please pretend that you got your shit kicked out of you by ghosts so we can all go home? Thanks a lot.
I remember back when I was drinking and working at my family store, there was one morning, it was the morning of my first blackout the night before. I had to work the day shift. And I was so hungover, I fell asleep behind the till on the floor. And the first guy who came in, I said, "Oh, sorry, I'm really tired." And he looked at me. "Okay, I'm hungover." This guy, this is just, yeah. He was Stensky was out the night before, and he's like, "Yeah, no, fucking, it's ghosts, man. It's ghosts. Flaming fingers. That's why I have this infection. That's what I'm going to tell my wife."
I filled out a Too Spooky form and everything. It's crazy.
Yeah, they shut down this mine for an entire day.
Well, I know in that the Folklore Quarterly I mentioned, they talk about how miners are very, very superstitious.
Oh yeah.
If they get the hunch, I think it's called the hunch, and they will not go in. Some guys will, especially if it's getting towards the end of their career or the end of their time in that particular mine, sometimes they will just stop turning up for the last few days because the superstition that it's in your last days that it's going to get you. And they'll actually write it, speaking of drunkenness, they'll write it off to drunkenness. Sometimes their wives even will get them hammered in the morning before one of their last days so they can't go into work. And just so they can possibly avoid that, the curse of the partner in the 80s cop movie.
This one confusing me because it's actually Taylor Mine, but in the newspaper it's owned by the Delaware and Hudson Company, so it comes up as the Delaware Hudson Mine sometimes.
Right.
Yeah, this one is another ghost. It's a hollow-eyed, white-robed, luminiferous form, this is a quote, of a man bearing a light that had no flicker. It's actually pretty creepy. When the men tried to approach the ghost, it wouldn't allow anyone to get too close. It either disappeared or would fade back. So much faith do the men place in that report that some of them shrink with terror at the thought of approaching that portion of the mine where the ghost made its appearance. There's a guy, John Wawinski, they interviewed, and he said that he first saw it and he immediately told of his experience to the other workmen. The miners now won't work. And they actually stationed themselves outside where this guy originally saw the ghost. in hopes of either like seeing it or telling it to get lost. They never did see it again. But yeah, that's another one where some guys left and it was okay for them to leave because like, oh no, we have another ghost problem. And that's in the Scranton Republican.
On a recent episode of Ghost Story Guys, I talked about, actually I think it was on the most recent one, I talked about an account that came into my my Haunted Revelstoke blog. And of course, for your listeners who don't know, I'm originally from Revelstoke, BC in Western Canada. I wrote a book called Strange Little Place, which you can find everywhere. Fine books are sold. Get the audiobook.
He said it.
He did the thing.
Buy it.
I did already. You guys go buy it. It's seriously good.
I don't know how to read, so it wouldn't do me any good.
Oh, the audiobook's even better.
Oh, okay.
Because I read it to you.
Yeah.
The publisher isn't really interested in ghost books anymore, so there's not going to be another one. But
No.
I've started a blog where people can submit stories from Revelstoke, because Revelstoke is still a deeply haunted place, you know, and it's a small town, so people are still very guarded. But when stories do come out, I put them on this blog, and I had one come in because there is a story about a little girl in a blue dress. And it's from one side of what's called the Arrow Lakes, the Columbia River. But this person submitted a story. They saw, the reason I bring it up, a luminescent girl on the other side of the lake while they were camping one night. So there does seem to be like, it's almost cliche, you know, the idea of a luminescent ghost, but it's very much a thing.
Right. And I imagine too, if you're down there, the only light that these guys usually had was that torch kind of thing that was an open flame, actually, I found out, which is where a lot of the explosions came from.
Yeah.
That'll do it.
Yeah. So then there's, like it's mostly dark around you, and then you're just seeing this like bright thing in front of you, and you're like, what the hell is that? I wouldn't want to go back not knowing what it was. Absolutely not.
I found too that I didn't realize this, but there is also sort of a minor culture of will-o'-the-wisps or load lights, where, you know, they claim that this sort of luminescence will appear where ore is, kind of leading you to it. But
Oh, that's interesting.
yeah, but there's also this Cornish version of it, which they call them jack-o'-lanterns. And they're said, with the Cornish, it's said that if you follow it, you're not coming back. So there's two very, very different takes on this. But I know some people talk about the load lights. It could be, I guess there are glowworms down there. And there's a particular kind of, I want to say moss or mold that grows, and that can also pick up condensation, and then that can kind of glow in the right light. So there's some people who sort of attribute it to that.
That's a good point, though, about the natural world actually giving off that same light.
I was before like doing this, I did a little bit of research, and one of the things I typed in was just like creatures in caves, and it just brought up like actual animals that live in caves, and they're fucking creepy. And I think we need to just burn caves to the ground.
Oh yeah, stay out of caves. It's just generally speaking, stay above ground, stay out of the forest, stay out of the water. Really just find yourself a nice bar somewhere quiet and sit there, and you should be relatively safe.
Relatively, yes.
Yeah.
There's snakes that will go to the top of the cave ceiling and just like hang down, and what they're doing is they're waiting for bats to fly by, and then they snag them out of the air. But I don't need the snakes above me. I don't need that in my life. I don't want that.
You don't want that?
No, I don't want that at all.
Nope, 0 stars.
That's worse than like ghosts, in my opinion.
Aerial snakes are 1,000 times worse than any ghost you can conjure up. I mean, the natural world generally is a horror, and far more terrifying than anything the paranormal has to offer.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, guys, this is the last one as far as the ghost stories from the mines. And JC tried valiantly to do his right homework, but he kept typing in caves instead of mines.
Look, I sometimes do my best.
I know, and that's why we love you. It's fine. It's fine. You tried. You did good, kid.
An A for effort.
Attaboy.
So this one takes place in Chickasaw Mine, and I just like to say Chickasaw. I'm not going to try to say the PA place. I think it's like, man, it is a weird spelling. It's like kittening, but I think that we call it kittening. It's one of those dialect things. And since it's way out near Pittsburgh, they talk weird. We don't love you, Pittsburgh, but you're just a bunch of weirdos. We don't get you. I mean, you still call things pop instead of soda. We talked about that like in the very first episode. So
wait, Brennan, what do you call soda?
I call it soda, but it's absolutely an affectation because people here refer to it as pop.
See,
Oh, okay.
I don't like the way pop sounds. It makes me sound like a fucking child.
Yeah, you're welcome to America
you.
anytime.
Woohoo!
I know.
I hate
I'm sure you're
healthcare.
so excited.
I can't wait to walk into a Ralph and not know whether or not the guy next to me has a gun.
Right? Yeah, it's exciting. It's like one of those. It's like a Russian roulette kind of game. You never know. You know.
You'll know. Trust me. I don't know if they have a gun. I worked at a place that I would see many guns a day because people would
Yikes.
come in with them. And it's just like the clientele that store attracted were people that carried, which is fine. It's their right.
I don't have a problem with guns. I have fired guns. And firing guns is fun. Because I invariably, whenever I mention gun, I could be talking about fucking James Gunn making the Guardians of the Galaxy, and someone
Yay!
will say, "Man, you hate guns." No, not true. I dislike irresponsible gun owners, and
Thank you.
I think that kind of bullshit pageantry where like, look, I have a tiny penis and I'm afraid all the time, so I'm gonna have
Yes.
my gun hanging out my shirt. Like, no. You're an asshole. You're not a hero. You're an asshole.
Yep.
Sure.
Cord feels the same way. We're all like kind of on the same.
Are we getting into this conversation again?
No, we're not doing it again. No.
2 hours later.
Right?
I'm sorry. I thought I was in America.
It's America. Get it right. Anyhow, Chickasaw Mine. This is a great one. I kind of want to read the whole article on this. It's so fun, and it's not really that long. March 9th, 1913. Tales of a ghost having been seen in the Chickasaw coal mine. Coal mines were rife a few days ago. Scoffs at first greeted the story when it was told in the little mining town on the Pittsburgh and Shawmut Railroad in Madison Township. And now y'all know where it is. Later, men rushed from the mines. Wow, this is not my fault.
It's going well.
It's so good. It's the best read I've ever done. Wow. With the terrifying stories of an apparition, half man, half beast, carrying a luminous dinner pail and going from room to room, ordering them to quit work. The men do not need a second warning, but are reported to have dropped tools and fled. It is said Ray took possession of the motor, ordered its driver to depart, and then took the trip of loaded cars to the pit mouth. On arriving outside, however, the trip was discovered by the tipple crew to be without its motorman, and it was taken in charge by the crew. So basically, the crew finds the thing actually not having been manned by anyone. The miners refused to work for several nights, but tomorrow are expected to return. I want to believe it because it's hysterical, but at the same time, I'm like, can you imagine like a ghost comes in with a dinner plate?
A centaur, no less.
Yeah, and right, half man, half beast, carrying a luminous dinner plate, and is like, you need to stop working. Okay,
You don't gotta tell me twice, boss.
I'm out.
I have a right to work, centaur. See here, Newton.
I'm pretty sure those guys just needed a couple days off.
I love that this is like it says men refuse to work in ghost haunted mine. Apparition frightens miners and runs trip of loaded cars to entrance.
But remember, it's women who are too emotional.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I like also that there's a little addendum that says special to the Post. So that meant that this was only reported in the Pittsburgh Daily Post. It was an exclusive. Good times in the mines of Pennsylvania. So to wrap up, miners are superstitious as fuck.
Miners are superstitious and don't go underground.
Yeah.
Just don't go outside.
See? He's got the right idea.
If there's one thing I learned from listening to your podcast, one thing I took away, it's just don't go outside.
That's it.
I always enjoy your episodes when it deals with forests and outside because I live in the forest.
Right.
JC has been here. He knows. This place is, yeah.
There's some trees, a lack of people,
Yeah.
animals just roaming around. Yeah, it's pretty. By definition, I guess you could say it's the forest.
Let's say in the morning, the thing that creeps me out the most is it's pitch black outside, but especially when I had to work those 2 a.m. shifts and it's just pitch black and you hear movement in the woods and you just have to keep telling yourself that those are just the deer. That's just deer moving back there. Don't be ridiculous. And one morning I came out, I didn't hear anything at all. I get in the car, I back up, I go, my driveway is kind of like up on it goes on a hill a little bit. I just get to the crest, and there standing in front of me is the largest buck that I'd ever seen in my entire life. And then I realized, wait a minute, I actually have seen this one other time. Was out on the road when he was just literally standing there like, what are you going to do? Hit me? Because the thing is just immense. The rack on this thing was, I don't even know. And it did the same thing in my driveway. It's just standing there staring at me like, yeah, will destroy your car. I'm just going to stand here for a minute. And then it just looked at me and then just roamed off into the woods like Nothing had happened.
Established dominance.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's exactly what it felt like in those moments. It was like, well, you're huge. And then I saw pictures of moose and I was like, oh my God.
Yeah. I've never actually seen a moose, but I've heard they're huge.
Yeah. I thought like Canadians just rode moose to work.
Ah, shit, you got me. I spoiled it. I spoiled it. No.
You ride moose to work, you drink maple syrup in your beer. Come on. We know these things are true.
That's right. I was just trying to confound you. I was trying to confuse you.
All of you are hockey fans.
Okay, when you have to, otherwise you kick you out of the country.
Right.
We have a lot of deer here in Victoria. And last year, during the pandemic, to make ends meet, I was delivering food through Skip the Dishes. And one night I had to go to this one apartment building, and there was an enormous fucking deer eating the bushes right in front of the door. And I'm standing there and I'm thinking, I'm gonna die with some idiot's McDonald's order in my hand. His 1 a.m. stoned nugget run is going to be the thing that causes me to end my life, because this thing caught sight of me and started just staring at me. And this guy who was up in one of the balconies above said, I wouldn't stare back. Yep. Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah, that's Hank. He doesn't like direct eye contact.
Present your backside to him. He may mount you, but you'll get out of it alive. The son of a bitch better have tipped.
How far Brennan's willing to go to get people their stoner McDonald's.
Whether rain, sleet, or horny deer. I had one night that was weirdly horny out there. Like, I delivered a bottle of wine to this woman, and she was standing outside her house, of course, and waiting for it. And I brought it, and she goes, "Oh yeah, I got to finish up this gardening." I said, "You want to help? I got wine for after." I said, "Well, ma'am, in another life, maybe, but I gotta go." And so I kept going, got back to work. A little bit later that night, I had the second weirdly horny incident that somehow slipped my memory. But the third was I had to deliver McDonald's again to this house out in the burbs. And it was about 1 a.m. And as I walked up to the house, I could see through the ground floor window that there was a bunch of, teenagers having a party. The note said, walk it around to the patio doors at the back, leave it, and knock. So I did. Dropped it, knocked, started walking away. I'm just about to walk around the corner of the house when I hear the patio door open. And then I heard someone say, Jen's going to show the Skip the Dishes guy her boobs. And this scream, woo, comes out of the door. And I hear feet, and then I hear, aw, because I thought there's no way in hell I'm turning around. There's no way in hell. Because this is going to end up on some 15-year-old's TikTok, and then Chris Hansen from To Catch a Predator is going to jump out and tackle me. So,
or JC's going to send it to us in our chat,
Yeah, there you go. And we come full circle.
Yay, we did it.
Nah.
Our featured music today is from Hororhaus, based in the Catskills of New York. Hororhaus is a hybrid of occult 70s and 80s horror soundscapes, black metal themes, and dark 80s synth sounds married to create gothic electronica. Today we're playing Ghost Host, which you can also find on our Mission Spooky Halloween Spotify playlist. Hororhaus has a new single available on Bandcamp called Eternal, and my Bauhaus fans will love this song and I think instantly hear the influence. When we get back, Brennan will be discussing his current projects and give us some of his favorite spooky movies.
Sons of witches and daughters of somethings.
Well, thank you, Brennan, for coming on today. It's been a blast.
It sure has.
And where can we find all of you? All of you.
Well, onlyfans.com/larger than truth. Reality ever starts unraveling, you'll know it's because I started an OnlyFans. the only stripper in history where people pay me money to put clothes back on. Thank you for having me. This has been a ton of fun. If you want to find me, I'm at ghoststoryguys.com. The Ghost Story Guys podcast is published every 2 weeks. You can find us everywhere fine podcasts live. If you don't like ads, you can find us at patreon.com/ghoststoryguys, and for $1 a month you get an ad-free feed. I'm also the host of Larger the Truth with Brennan Storr, and that's a non-paranormal interview show where I just find the most interesting people I can and talk to them about their world and the things that make them tick. By the time this comes out, I don't know who my most recent guest will be, but I've been speaking recently to James Kennedy, author of Dare to Know, which is a brand new sci-fi thriller. Michael LaBella, who's a Pennsylvania-based musician. I also had a great conversation with Chad Williamson, who is Moonrunner 83, and he's sort of one of the big guys in the synthwave scene, especially up here in Canada. And we talk about all kinds of stuff, whether it's the art the person is into, their music, what it was like for them growing up. We kind of go all over the place, and it's a lot of fun. It's sometimes you hear some really, it's all interesting, but sometimes some really unusual stuff. You know, Chad from Moonrunner ended up talking about his childhood at a conservative boys' school where they did dog sled trips and winter camping and all kinds of wonderful insanity. And you can find that at largelythetruth.com or everywhere fine podcasts live.
And you have a book.
I do. I have a book, A Strange Little Place, The Hauntings and Unexplained Events of One Small Town. That is available wherever fine books are sold. That's okay, Amazon. It's mostly just Amazon now. And and there's also the audiobook. You can get that at Audible or via iTunes. And I am working on other books, but I have ADHD, and so I get really into a project, and then I forget about it for a long time. So they will come out at some point. But in the meantime, the podcasts are there, and you can also check out hauntedrevelstoke.com or a strangelittle.place.com for my Haunted Revelstoke blog.
Yeah. Well, we're huge Ghost Story Guys fans, so.
Oh,
Yes.
You're my favorite.
I've always appreciated the support.
Yeah. Big fans of you. You're a big inspiration.
That's really cool. Thank you. I always love when you guys get in touch. You know, it's I kind of find it to be a lonely job sometimes because like for me, podcasting is my job. I'm a full-time podcaster, and so I spend a lot of time, sitting in a room talking to a microphone by myself. So when I get an opportunity to talk to the people in the community, to hang out with you guys, it's a ton of fun for me. So I really appreciate you having me on and shooting the shit.
And I hope this is still true, but JC and I were on your Patreons only special from last year, this time around last year. So
Yes.
Definitely go check out Ghost Story Guys Patreon and
Totally.
join.
Yeah, that's still there. I haven't taken any of the older Patreon stuff down. It's all,
Yeah.
Christ, you sign up, you're never going to stop listening to shit. There's stuff going back, I think, 3 years.
Oh, you guys have an enormous amount of stuff to listen to on the Patreon. I was like, oh my God, so many cool things. Oh, we were on with, don't tell Paul. I just forgot his name for a second.
Okay.
So it was me, JC, Paul Vestal, and
Oh, Kevin.
Yeah. Jeez, Kevin Eustace.
Yeah,
I do now remember them making a joke about how they were both sharing the only internet in all of UK.
That's so funny.
Brennan, do you have any like creepy recommendations for people to get into? Whether it be podcasts, new movies, old movies, I don't know, shows, whatever.
I'll be totally honest. I don't listen to a lot of paranormal shows anymore because I make one, and I'm always a little bit like, am I gonna rip off this person or unconsciously rip off this person? But Mysteries and Monsters I think is great just because Paul knows so fucking much, and
Yes.
if you want to learn stuff especially about the paranormal, I think it's hard to do better because it's presented in a really easy to understand way, and he always talks to interesting people. Again, The Dark Paranormal, Kev Eustace's show. I watch like 30 to 50 movies a month. So in terms of creepy movies, I can absolutely do that. So for 3 spooky movies I can recommend, if I'm not recommending podcasts, I recommend Neil Blomkamp's Demonic. It just came out. I know it was not very well reviewed. I actually found it really creepy, and it was shot partially in a location we talked about on episode 18, The City by the Lake and Other Places to Die. And it was shot in an abandoned TB sanitarium outside the town of Kamloops, BC.
Oh.
Very haunted place. It's a very haunted place. And again, the movie was shot during the pandemic, so it's a little rough around the edges, but I still think it's worth your time. The next one is a classic slasher that just seems to have slipped under the radar for a lot of people. It's from 1981. It's called The Prowler. And if you've got Arrow streaming, and if you like classic horror especially, if you don't have Arrow streaming, I recommend it. This isn't an ad or anything. I'm just saying I like it. It's $5 a month. They've got it streaming on there. It's a really nice restoration, but it's gory as shit. And if you like that kind of thing, Tom Savini, who worked on a few of the, actually he's from Pennsylvania as well. I think he's from Pittsburgh. He had worked on the Friday the 13th movies. He did the gore effects on this, and it's just brilliant. So some of the kills are really well executed. And in that vein, if you like kills, if you like that kind of thing, I recommend The Mutilator. And it's 1980s slasher, and it was done by Mark Shostrom. He did the effects, and he went on to do, The Nightmare on Elm Street, a bunch of other stuff. Mark's a really talented guy. I don't think he's working anymore, but some great gore effects, but also kind of it's not quite as gross as some of those slasher movies got, like especially some of the non-famous ones. There's just this sort of like really seamy, kind of rapey edge to it that I find really off-putting. Mutilator doesn't have that, so that's another one. And finally, I will say The Amusement Park. And that turned up on Shudder recently, so you can take advantage of your new Shudder subscriptions. That is a lost film from director George Romero, who directed Night of the Living Dead.
Oh.
Yeah. It was done as like a PSA on elder abuse by some group, but he of course took it in his own direction. And you start watching it and you think, okay, whatever, this isn't scary. But by the end of the film, it's about 75 minutes, maybe even less. It is so fucking harrowing in terms of its sensory overload. It hits you, and you're worn out by the end of it. So that is another one.
The Mutilator is actually on Tubi
Oh, there you go.
for free. So yeah, I just happened to want you to look that one up. So yeah, mark that down. Thank you again for being on the show, Brennan, because wow, totally a lot of fun. And hopefully we can do it again.
I hope so too.
Taking us out again is Hororhaus with my new favorite song to jam to, Ghost Host. You can find all of Hororhaus's music on Spotify, and please go support them on Bandcamp like we did.
Stay spooky and don't die. But if you do, contact us.
What you're going to do is you're going to send a TikTok to JC.
My TikTok handle is Mission Spooky JC.
There you go. Send him a TikTok so he can forward it onward and completely fuck with everyone else's day.